All right, we had the new CFP rankings come out last night, and this is how the bracket would look based off of those rankings. Wait, is that, are we live, Noah? Okay, we're live. All right, that's not the thing that you were just showing me. That's why I'm asking. So Boise State would get the bye. It would be Penn State in that 5 spot against Arizona State. There's a lot that can happen this weekend to change this all up. But let's jump into a scenario and something that you might not think about as something to watch for this weekend. Now, Alabama is projected to make the CFP as the last at-large team right now. And they're going to get in unless there's some, Clemson victory against SMU, and you just never know how things will unfold. But as of right now, Alabama is looking like that team that's going to get in. Miami is looking like the team that's not going to get in. That really being behind Alabama, neither one of those two teams play, so there's no way for them to pass Alabama, you would think, in the rankings. So they are out despite only having 2 losses and Alabama having 3. Now, here's the thing that I want to point your attention to. Big Ten championship game on CBS, Saturday, 8 Eastern. The winner of Penn State, Oregon, is going to get a bye and the Big Ten championship. The loser will have to play in the first round, but that loser will get a home game and potentially the number 5 seed. Chris Hassel with Sportsline's Mackenzie Brooks and Danny Kanell. Mackenzie, why is the loser of the Big Ten championship game in place to win in the college football playoff?
That loser of the Big Ten championship game is the biggest winner of this weekend to me, because you likely get that 5 seed. That 5 seed I've been talking about since week 2, the most favorable spot to be. The first few weeks, I thought it was a bug in our model. I thought this was just a coincidence. But really, you get any version of the Big 12 champ and the Mountain West champ if you are that 5 seed. That is tremendously more favorable than being the 1 seed and getting the 8-9 winner. The 8-9 winner right now is Ohio State, Tennessee. What kind of gift is that? For being the 1 seed, the best team in the country, you get the bye week, and oh yeah, your first game is a neutral site game against likely Ohio State. That's a pick'em. Okay, maybe optimistically Oregon -2.5, maybe a field goal, but I'd rather go into a home game, be basically over 2 touchdown favorites against a Boise State or Arizona State, whoever the Big 12 winner is. Then you go on and then you play Boise State again, or the Big 12 winner, whichever version of the story. It's an 80% chance to win times a 90% chance to win, which is still better than a 62% chance to win in 1 game. So that is why the 5 seed, it just seems like the best place to be. I'm not here telling teams to flunk their conference championship games, but I would not be upset if I landed in that 5 spot.
This is the projected path right now. If you're asking why it says Iowa State, not Arizona State, it's because you guys are projecting Iowa State to beat Arizona State in the simulation.
I mean, any version of you getting to play the Big 12 winner and you getting to play the Mountain West winner, that is your 2 first games. That is a far better spot to be than playing the winner of that 8-9, which constantly, week after week, is a really tough matchup.
But you have to play an extra game. Danny, are you buying what she's selling?
So that's the only thing I would push back on, because when we had this conversation before, remember, it was going to be the 3rd place Big Ten team. It was going to be Penn State still, because Oregon would have played Ohio State, and then maybe that's Ohio State's 2nd loss. They would have fallen behind. Then I think it's a no-brainer. You kind of like that spot because you get that bye. The only thing I would counter with is that it's a grind, right? You're subject to the pounding, to the beating of playing in a Big Ten championship, putting your bodies on the line. Who knows what type of injuries you face in that game. But I guarantee you, if you're Dan Lanning or you're the loser of this game as James Franklin, you are spinning it this way, and you're probably looking at this bracket saying, okay, this isn't that bad.
And everyone talks about this bye week. Oh, well, it's a bye week. It's great. Everybody gets a bye week next week with Army-Navy. At what point does a bye week turn into rust? Now, don't ask me. I didn't play college football. I'll ask you that question. But at what point everybody gets a bye? And if you're practicing, and if you're practicing at 100%, if you're not practicing at 100%, are you really practicing? So everybody's prone to injury. Everybody gets a bye week. At what point is it too much rest?
I just thought the interesting dynamic was the 3rd place team, I think, would have had the advantage because you had the best of both worlds.
Sure.
So now, I mean, injury is that's the big concern. Like, you don't want to risk guys to injury. But again, I agree with you that I think the odds in that one, I think Penn State would be an 11.5-point favorite against Arizona State at home. They'd probably be the same neutral or maybe more against Boise State. So they're looking at, hey, we'll get right back and get that rematch right down the road, we'll get that opportunity.
And don't get it twisted. Odds makers are going to make these lines a lot smaller because they know the sticky situation they're in. Now, the beauty of the sports line model is we don't owe anyone anything. Right. So we're here to tell you if they were going to truly, rawly, make these spreads, it'd be Oregon, if they're that 5 seed in that first round against Iowa State, be like -18. There you have it right there. And then -21 against Boise State. Like, I'd rather have 2 games where that's the spread than 1 game against Ohio State in a neutral site where it's -2.
How much does a Boise loss potentially throw a wrench into this situation?
Because then it could be Alabama as the number 12. Because the Big 12 team in that scenario, if UNLV beats Boise, Boise's knocked out. UNLV would then
be the 12.
Jump in.
Because the UNLV would be the 12, the Big 12 champion would get the bye, no?
Well, it depends on who wins the ACC. If it's Clemson, they could be on the outside. They could be the 12 seed. Like if Clemson wins against SMU, that could be it. So I think it kind of depends on this. The way you had it set up there, like, yes, I think it's clear. But that's where I think coaches would be a little bit lenient of like, hey, do we not show everything because it's not that bad if we get a loss? Because there's no guarantee of your matchups. But I do think that in that situation, like in the bracket we showed the projections the way that we think that it'll go, I think then that Penn State would be a huge winner in that situation, having the easiest road to a title.
This all would have been fine if Florida State was just better. This is all Florida State's fault. The committee's plan was to have Florida State win the ACC. Their plan was to have Utah win the Big 12 and not have SMU and Boise State sitting in that number 3 and number 4 team. So I blame Florida State and Danny Kanell.
I blame preseason rankings for coming.
Here we go.
Because they do matter. Arizona State. Exactly. They're the only reason they're so far behind is because they started from nowhere. Same thing with Iowa State. They were not preseason ranked in the top 25. Boise State was. So then they become these darlings. They have the close game against Oregon. They don't drop it all. So they've stayed slotted ahead of Arizona State, and then they've just won. And Arizona State's been playing catch up the whole time. Even though their schedule has been tougher, they're not getting credit for it because they didn't start there.
I mean, your problem with the Big 12 is that your 10th best team in the conference is just as good as your first best team in the conference. That's the problem with the Big 12. You could put Kansas in there for all I care. It would be the same storyline. That's the Big 12 problem right now. You don't have your top dogs, your Colorados and your Utahs performing the way they were supposed to.
But here's the problem I have with the Mountain West. It's a 3-team league. Like their 4th best team is Fresno State. I think they're 6-6. Like, and there's a bunch of 6-6, 5-7, and worse. They have 3 good teams in that league, and they're going to get a bye. That to me makes no sense whatsoever. And I'll be interested to see if Arizona State wins. I'll be interested if Kenny Dillingham points out that one of their losses was with Jeff Sims as the starter on the road against Cincinnati. They did not have Sam Leavitt as their quarterback. It hurt them. They lost. The committee, as we've seen in years past, they can take into account quarterback injury.
Totally.
So could they sell that and say, you know what, that should allow us to jump? And on top of the fact that beating Iowa State is ranked higher than UNLV, would that be a better win and a bigger conference? Is that enough to leapfrog Boise State? If I was in the committee room, I would be pounding the table for that. I don't know if the Big 12 has an advocate or anybody making that case. Clearly, the Big 10 has some important voices in there. The SEC always does. It just feels like the ACC and Big 12 never have somebody that makes the case for their conference.
I predict that when they go to adjust these rules, if we stay in a 12-team playoff, they will make it that if you win your conference, you do get you're guaranteed in the playoff. I don't know if it will necessarily make you a top 4 seed, especially because if it's going to be Boise State's and I think the world of SMU. I'm not here to rain on their parade, but they really made this decision thinking FSU's and Utah's would be winning their championships, and they're not. So I think it will be eventually, you definitely lock in a spot. It might just not be that top 4 that bye week.
Interesting stuff. The loser of the Big 10 championship game could be in a better spot to win the college football playoff. We'll see it all go down 8 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday on CBS. And our crew, including these two, will get you ready to go with our pregame show on Saturday beginning at 9 a.m. Eastern time from Indianapolis.